It's finally time to once again sit back and watch one of the biggest Trackmania tournaments taking place. And it's not only a big tournament that is going to take place now, it's going to be the return of the World Championship. The Trackmania Grand League World Cup will take place the upcoming weekend, and then the finals will be played out on July 4th. 16 players that have qualified either through their performance in Trackmania Grand League or their performance in the Open Qualifier. The group stage will determine what 8 players then advance to the final. I have had success with the tier list I made in the past. People have said that they liked it, and the views have also been decent. So I thought, why not once again make a little tier list? The idea is still the same. It's a tier list to show a casual fan what they can expect from their players, like who is realistically a winner, who is a candidate for the playoffs, and who is an underdog that essentially has already reached maybe their goal of just being here. Feel free to make your own tier list and tag me in the picture on Twitter, and then we can discuss who had the better tier list once the cup is over. But for now, let's get into it. The different tiers are as follows, and has been the same ever since I started making this tier list. Tier 1 is can win it all, self-explaining. You can win it, and it's not a surprise if you end up winning it. Because in the end, everybody can win it, but who is likely to win it? Likely on the podium, again, the same. Who is likely to end up on the podium, who has the skill level that is needed, and the same for CM playoffs, who is a solid playoff candidate. Make or break is a tier list for me to sort of cop out. If I don't want to put a player in a certain tier simply because they can end up in all of them, I'll put them here. Underdog is someone who has already maybe reached their goal of just being here, and who I don't have high expectations for. So let's go. The first player is Orrell. Orrell is a guy who has made the playoffs both seasons, or both previous seasons of Trackmania Grand League, but still haven't had that solid run where he can put on his resume as, yeah, I got a podium placement in Trackmania Grand League winter 2021 or in fall 2020. But I will put Orrell as a playoff candidate. Let's see what Cup mode does with him. He has performed well in this endurance format, the Champions mode. Not really too well in the playoff format using Trackmania Grand League. So maybe this can be sort of something in between the playoff format used in Trackmania Grand League and then the group stage format in Trackmania Grand League. But I wouldn't be surprised if Orrell makes it into the playoffs, and I would be somewhat disappointed if he doesn't make it. Mikotro, the guy who is seeded the lowest, he is seed number 16 going into the group stage, where they will play in cup mode, so it's going to be 1 versus 1 versus 1 versus 1. He is seed number 16, and CarlJr is seed number 1, so that means that Mikotro is likely to have the hardest matches, while CarlJr is then likely to have the easiest matches. I think Mikotro already reached his goal of just being here. At least that is what I can expect from him. I'm not going to say that I expect him to reach the playoff and be one of the top 8 players. And then, of course, I'm not going to say that he's expected to be a top 3 player or a top 1 player. But he has the skills to do it, but he has to have a really good day then as well, and maybe be somewhat lucky. But already nice to see a Nordic player back in the top field and the top 16 players in the world. Spam, one of the OGs, one of the guys who has performed well at the most amount of events in the history. Did not go his way last time in Trackmania Grand League, missed out on the playoffs. This time I think he will find a way to reach the playoffs, and he is so used to this cup mode. He is used to pressure situations. He knows what it takes to essentially reach the top level in Trackmania. If he is at his peak of his Trackmania career, that is debatable. I wouldn't go against it, but I know that some people would. But I think Spam has it in it to reach the playoff. And to be honest, I wouldn't be that surprised if he reached the podium. Of course, I'm gonna be somewhat surprised, but not really. Not really, really surprised. He performed well in Lyon 1 year ago in Trackmania Grand League, both in the Trackmania Grand League tournament and the Lyon Esport tournament. So who knows? But I will put him at a playoff spot. Alfie is also a playoff candidate. He has reached a playoff both times in Trackmania Grand League. He's super strong. Let's see what Cup mode does with him. But I will put him as more likely than both Orrell and Spam to actually reach the playoffs. If he's gonna end up on the podium, he can, but I wouldn't feel confident about saying that he is 100% gonna end up there. Default, the only guy I doesn't have a picture of, then he's gonna be an underdog. Not for that reason, but he has the skills to surprise people or to do something with the more established players. But I'm not gonna say that I expect him to do it. So he could be a make or break player, but I'm gonna put him as an underdog because I don't feel it confidently saying that he's gonna be one of the top 8 players, top 3 players, or top 1 player. Kappa is though a candidate for both winning it all, even though it feels less likely now than maybe it did before, let's say, Lyon last year, or even before that TMGL beta season. Is he a podium candidate? For sure. Then, of course, he's going to be a likely candidate for playoffs. But I don't feel confident about putting him for sure in one of these categories, so I'm going to put him as a make or break player. Simply because he didn't reach the playoffs in the last season of Trackmania Grand League, and then I wouldn't be surprised if you say that he doesn't make it into the playoffs this time either. But turn it the other way around, I wouldn't be surprised if you say that Kappa is in the grand final and has a big chance of actually winning it. He looks solid in the qualification. I wish this cup was offline in front of a stage because I think he is, if not the guy who advanced the most once it comes down to performing in front of a stage, then at least one of the guys that performs the best in offline format. But I have no idea where to put Kappa. Masa, same goes for Masa, but to a lesser extent, I guess. I will be more surprised if Masa wins it than if Kappa wins it, but it's Masa, so I guess Masa knows it himself, and Masa has sort of accepted that. He is a risky player. He is a player that plays with somewhat emotions, but I have a feeling, but I also had a feeling in last time that Masa was going to make it into the playoffs. And once Masa reached the playoff, because even though he is one of the top 8 players that qualified from the Trackmania Grand League, he still hasn't reached a playoff in Trackmania Grand League. And I feel once he is in that playoff, who knows what is going to happen. So I don't feel confident about saying if he's going to finish 15th or 2nd. Bings, another player I will put here. One of the new faces in the scene. Just qualified for Trackmania Grand League and then also just qualified for this World Cup. Has the pace, has the skills. Let's see if he has the head to perform well once it matters the most, once it's the most prestigious tournament of the year. But I hope that Binks will do well. That because we need new profiles at the top. Maybe not more French people, but I don't care too much about nationality. And I think Binks is gonna be one of these guys in the future that we just have to accept that is one of these best players, and he's more than welcome to knock some of these established players out. Evan just knocked out of the Trackmania Grand League, so he has to play the Open Grand League, but it didn't seem to hit him too hard because in the Open Qualifier he looked solid and he made it. So I'll put him as an underdog. I don't expect him to reach a playoff. I don't think he has the skill level to do, let's say, a podium placement. So he's an underdog. Not really surprised if he makes the playoff. Surprised if he makes it to the podium. Really surprised if he ends up winning it. But let's see. I hope he is gonna do well. So Team Secret is gonna regret that they didn't re-sign him. Pack, no-brainer. Arguably the best player in 2021 so far. Looked really good in the last season of Trackmania Grand League. The only real contender for CarlJr. It might be the only real contender for CarlJr at this World Cup as well. But Pack has a skill level that is unheard of. He has a skill ceiling that is unheard of. Cup mode suits him. We know that. The map suits him. We know that. So everything seems to align for Pack to do well here. He just have to beat CarlJr. Like the rest of them. Papu performed well for so many years since Trackmania Grand League was announced. Pretty much at every single Trackmania Grand League he has been there. Just barely though at the last group stage, but he made it. But I would feel more confident saying that Papu was a hotter candidate in the last game of Trackmania. I don't know if it's the dirt environment that has changed so much that he doesn't have that edge, or if it's motivation, or if it is other players stepping up. But last year I would put him here, but this year I'll put him as there. A solid contender for playoffs, a guy who should be disappointed if it doesn't reach playoff. And the fans of Papu should also be somewhat disappointed if he doesn't make the playoff. But I wouldn't feel confident about saying that he is gonna reach the playoff, or if this is gonna be finally that big solo win for Papu. CarlJr looked really good in that last match of the Open qualifier until the finalist mode. I don't know if it was the pressure that got to him or if it was maps that didn't suit him, but he has already reached what I can expect from him at least. I don't see him as a solid contender for a playoff, even though he certainly has the skills to do it. I think there are other players that are more likely for that playoff spot. So I'll put him as an underdog, but who knows where CarlJr can end up. If he plays like he did the first 98% of the time in the last match, then who knows, he can be a real threat to these established players. Gwen, no-brainer, a winner candidate. The skill level he has is equal to Pack. And I think you need a big skill level to reach or to win this tournament. Let's see. I think the motivation for Gwen is going to be higher now than it was in the last season of Trackmania Grand League, simply because now we have Serati Trackmania Cup coming around. You're going to have his first World Championship. So everything seems to align for him to spend a lot of time on Trackmania. And I guess once he spends a lot of time on Trackmania, well, we know what he's capable of. But he's still 16. Might equal CarlJr for the youngest world champion ever. Or is that Carl? At least both of them has won at the age of 16, and Gwen can then be the third world champion at the age of 16. Mara, one of the guys I put as a make or break or as an underdog last time I made his tier list. But we all know what happened, or at least hopefully. He ended up on the top 4. So I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up on the podium. He has the pace, he has the consistency, and he has the motivation, it seems like, to be a real strong contender for it. I could even put him as a winner candidate, but I don't see him at that level yet, but who knows. And I would feel confident about saying that he's gonna reach the playoffs, so he's a likely podium candidate for me. CarlJr, what can you say? Won the Trackmania Grand League now 3 seasons in a row. Back in the days, he has won the World Championship 3 years in a row. But let's see if he's gonna be able to win this World Cup. He has some strong contenders in Gwen and Pack, but CarlJr, of course, has a level to do it, and it seems like he has the motivation to put in enough effort to do it. So then who can stop him? That's the real question. Scrappy, the last player. It's a no-brainer. Make or break. What more can you say? I feel like the last, what will that be? Let's say 2021 is essentially a make or break story for Scrappy. and he has ended up on the good side of it so far. He didn't make top 8 in Trackmania Grand League's group stage, and then maybe people saw him as maybe a candidate to go out of Trackmania Grand League because he was bottom 4. Then he has this final chance. He ends up winning it. Then he gets a new chance of actually being in the playoff and have a chance at winning Trackmania Grand League Winter 2021. He makes it even to the same stage as Mora, top 3/4. And then he has to play head to head to even face or to risk relegation. So he then beats Avon, I believe it was. So it could have been such a different story for Scrappy in that season, but he ended up on a positive side of it, keeping his spot and also proving himself, what kind of level he has. But it wasn't over then. Scrappy had to play the Open Qualifier to reach this World Cup. An Open Qualifier that I sort of had given up on him. In the final match, I was like, okay, Scrappy's not going to make it. But guess what? Some way, somehow, he makes it back and he wins a really clutch round in the end. And he makes it. And now he's at equal level to the rest of them because all of them start at the same amount of points, going to play the same amount of matches, and basically then have the same chances of winning this. So if you say that Scrappy is a winner, I'm gonna be surprised, but not super surprised. If he ends up on the podium, I'm gonna be like, okay. But also, if he ends up 16th and being the worst player in this field, I'm gonna be like, okay. Because if I was a gambler, I would put money on Scrappy for having fun. As a gambler myself, like if I put money on him, I know that I'm gonna have fun. But I also wouldn't put money on him if I like the money or if I expect the money to come back, because who knows what Scrappy is gonna do. But yeah, I think I've spoken enough about this tier list. Is it someone I want to change? Nope. I think I'm happy with it. I think realistically there are 3 guys who have a level above the rest. That is CarlJr, that is Pac, that is Gwen. If anybody else besides these 3 people ends up winning it, I'm gonna be honest, I'm gonna be surprised. But then again, all 16 players have somewhat of a chance of winning it, some bigger than others, but these are the big 3. But it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun to once again have a big tournament in Trackmania. I'm gonna cover it. I'm already scheduled to have a lot of interviews coming up next week. And then I'm gonna follow the whole competition on Twitch, and I'm gonna update you on Twitter. And talking about Twitter, feel free to share your tier list with me on Twitter so we can see after the cup is over who had the better tier list. But that's it for now. Bye bye.